Good evening and welcome to BronxTalk. Before we begin the content of tonight's program, we need to mention that we were scheduled to have a debate for the Democratic primary in the 81st Assembly District tonight, but that has been canceled for now because one of the candidates, Jessica Altagracia-Woolford, is too ill with COVID to participate even virtually. We've tried to reschedule it, but with little time before the June 28th primary, we're not sure it is going to be possible. Especially, of course, it's impossible to predict when her health will return. If we can schedule individual interviews with incumbent Jeff Dinowitz or even Ms. Altagracia-Woolford, we will. Maybe we can schedule a debate, but for now, those plans are uncertain. Regardless, of course, all of us here at BronxNet wish Ms. Altagracia-Woolford a speedy recovery. For tonight's show, we have two interesting segments for you. The first is about preventing recidivism, and the second is about summer learning loss and making sure our kids make the most of their summertime educationally. So, for the first segment, please join me in welcoming the Deputy CEO of the Fortune Society, is Mr. Stanley Richards. Nice to have you with us, Mr. Richards.
Thank you so much for having me, Gary.
We certainly appreciate your joining us. Now, there's so much to talk about. We need about 2 hours for tonight to deal with this. You were incarcerated in the 80s. We don't necessarily want to go back that far. I can't count how many years that is. But what did you learn and what did you experience that you have taken with you as a former First Deputy Commissioner of Programs and Operations at the New York City Department of Corrections and now as a Deputy CEO at the Fortune Society?
Well, Gary, I'm a lifelong Bronxite. I was born and raised in Soundview Project and spent my life cycling in and out of jails. And I thought my life was destined to have those repeated cycles. And during my last incarceration in 1986, where I spent over 2.5 years on Rikers Island getting my case adjudicated, was sentenced to 9 years. When I went to prison, I found education. And I obtained my GED, I went to college, and I realized at that particular point that all of the stories I heard about who I am and what my life opportunities are were all lies, both from the larger society about who I am as a black man in a community raised in poverty. They were all lies. And I realized that the power of my life rested in my hands. And so I committed my life upon my release to helping others to see possibilities in their life, to move from survival mode, because I learned how to survive in prison, I learned how to survive in the street, to move from survival mode into a prosperous, healthy mode. And Fortune Society was the organization that allowed me to walk in that light. And they were the organization that walked the talk. While other organizations were serving formerly incarcerated people, Fortune Society was not only serving them, but providing them an economic opportunity to give back and to build their lives. And so I started at Fortune as a counselor in 1991.
You know what's interesting to me? My next question was going to be, what was like the little germ of a moment that moved you from point A to point B? But you've already said it, that it was the Fortune Society. Before we talk in specifics about their programs and those things, what did you see as commissioner, as a commissioner in the Department of Corrections? Either that you liked and thought was good, or was the whole thing, I mean, you were there, let's see, just a couple of years ago, or was it really like an eye-opening thing like, hey, this can't continue?
It was a sad experience. I mean, I was there, my last time was 1986, right? And what I saw when I went back as First Deputy Commissioner and the first formerly incarcerated person to be First Deputy Commissioner of the New York City Department of Correction, my office overlooked the cell where I was housed when I was in solitary confinement on Rikers Island. So what I saw was a continuation of what was experienced, that I experienced back in 1986. And so it was a continuation of seeing hurt. And I seen how incarcerated people were hurt. I seen how their families were hurt. I seen how officers were hurt. And it is a system that just perpetuates isolation. It perpetuates this survival of the fittest. And it perpetuates a sense of hopelessness. The facilities are old. The weapons we recovered were weapons that were made from the facility, not from visits. The rules and regulations are old and outdated, and staff, as much as people incarcerated, were really hopeless. And so when you have a situation where you have hurt people, hurt people hurt people. And so we have a system where people are really damaged. And what we know, and this is something we have been doing and advocating for at Fortune Society, we know the things that we could do to really help people rebuild their lives. And that's providing housing, providing economic opportunities through employment, providing substance abuse treatment and mental health treatment. And those are all the services that Fortune provides. We see about 9,000 people a year. And what we have been advocating for is we have to do something different. If we want a different result, we have to do something different. We can't treat every situation as if it's a nail and we are the hammer.
You were quoted, and I saw another TV interview that you did. You said that there are institutional barriers to changing the culture and changing the operation of the jail. That, it struck me, and it also scared me, because it's not like, well, okay, let's just fix up the place physically. And that means that there are systemic issues that are getting in the way. We could probably spend a lot of time talking about what those are, but list one or two of them that you say these are the kinds of things we've got to change systemically to fix this.
I think one that jumps out at me, and we hear about it in the news all the time, about how many officers are out sick. The sick leave policy for the Department of Corrections is one that doesn't provide the space for leadership to hold officers accountable and to make sure people are showing up at work. I'll just give you one quick example. If you or I called out sick on our jobs will expect us to be home. We're sick. We're not out. For the Department of Correction, their sick leave policy, they get 4 hours of what's called recreation time. If I call out sick, I'm not going to do recreation. I'm not going to the gym. I'm not. And
I got to tell you, man, that's crazy. That doesn't make any sense. I mean, I don't even want to know who came up with that rule or guideline, but it's a case of a system that's out of control, right?
That's right. And there are hundreds of directives that were written back in the 70s and the 80s that sort of guide the work that happens on Rikers Island and in the Department of Corrections.
So the federal government had said we're going to take over Rikers, and then very recently, just the other day, a federal judge accepted the city's plan to forestall the federal takeover of Rikers Island. Does that make you happy, or does that make you unhappy? They say their plan takes a harder line on correction officers, as you said, who've called in sick. They have reassigning correctional officers by skill. They claim a reduction in stabbings and slashings and those things since they've began to work on these things. Are you satisfied at the moment that the city has the right idea, or are you cautiously optimistic, or are you saying, no, we need somebody else to come in?
I remain cautiously optimistic, and here's why. For me, this isn't a win-lose situation. If Mayor Adams and Commissioner Molina are able to make the kind of fundamental changes that we need to make, that our officers are safe, that people incarcerated are safe, that family members know that their loved one who's incarcerated is safe, I'm all for that. That is a victory for all of us. If we can continue to reduce the number of people who are cycling through Rikers Island by creating the kind of supports that Fortune and other organizations provide, I am all for that. We need to be aligned that this isn't a win-lose situation. We should be rooting for the win. And I think the plan that Commissioner Molina put forward and some of the steps he has already taken is a step in the right direction. And two, I point out to one, he now has all of the wardens reporting to him. That is a fundamental change in the way that the structure was built out in the Department of Corrections. Two, he seems like all of the chiefs have resigned, and he's bringing in non-uniform civilian leaders, deputy commissioners, to manage some of those processes. And I think those are two huge systemic changes that I think sends a message to everybody that he
That-
is serious about
Yeah,
change.
that they mean business. You know, although I have to tell you, hearing you talk about it, it's like, wait a minute, that the wardens report to the commissioner, and that's never happened. You guys, I mean, I don't even want to think about it. I mean, it's just horrible. We're getting, let's see, Rikers is closed in 2027. In the jail, we're concerned about Concord Avenue. The communities, I believe, rightly so, are concerned about those jails. Do you believe, number one, it's a good idea? We don't have a lot of time, but number one, it's a good idea, and number two, that the jails won't be intrusive into vulnerable communities?
I think it's a really good idea because we're going to accomplish a couple of things. One, we're shrinking our footprint in terms of mass incarceration and closing generations who have experienced the trauma of Rikers Island and the isolation. So we're now going to have a smaller footprint, and we're bringing those jails into the communities where they have access to their family members, where they have access to the courts and legal, and they have access to social services. And so this is an opportunity for us to make sure we're taking our jails out of sight, out of mind, into a place that they can be held accountable.
And do you
Second
think
thing-
communities are concerned and have a reason to be concerned?
I think communities are concerned, but we need to continue to have a dialogue because what people are concerned about is usually the spreading of fear about who's going to be incarcerated there and what it's going to do to communities. We have had borough-based jails in New York City for as long as I can remember. When I was incarcerated, we used to have Bronx County that was located right across from the courthouse. We had the Queens Detention Facility. We had Brooklyn Detention Facility. We had Manhattan Detention Facility. So this is not a new concept. What it is a new model where we could use design to create humane spaces for those who have to be detained, and for those who have to work there, to work in a humane facility. And so
I
this is a good
just
thing.
before we run out of time, I wanted to mention that Fortune Society has opened up the Trinity Reverend William James Senior Apartments on Washington Avenue, which is wonderful. But let's wrap this up by talking about the Fortune Society. Who should know about it? Who should contact you? What will help in this whole process before we close Rikers and move to another model?
Well, Fortune Society is a full-service organization. Our only requirement for people that you have criminal justice experience. So if somebody has a family member or loved one who is about to come home or is home, someone with criminal justice experience need help finding a job, need help with substance abuse, mental health, housing, family reunification. If they have an open court case, they can contact us. The website is www.fortunesociety.org. We have a crisis team. We have services. We do lifetime aftercare. And we are a community of healers. And our work is community safety.
And trying to get people back to where they should be, and maybe they will get inspired like you did by the Fortune Society. Listen, Stanley Richards from the Fortune Society, thank you so much. Thank you for advocating for people of New York City. I mean, these are, let's face it. We really appreciate your time, and we appreciate the Fortune Society.
Thank you so much, Gary.
Folks, we're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. We're going to talk about summer learning loss. Maybe you never heard of it. It's happening, and we got to address it. We'll be right back.